Welcome to Marrin Costello Radio, where we have intentional conversations with impactful people. Your weekly dose of motivation, inspiration, and entrepreneurship. Join me as we explore the ins and outs of building and running a business, interview leaders across all industries, and find the common denominator beneath it all. Welcome to Marrin Costello Radio. So today on the show, we have Kinya Claiborne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh, this is such a treat for me. So I looked through my emails to see when we first met, because I couldn't trace it back in my memory as far back as we actually had. It was in 2014. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
You bought a pair of earrings from my website.
Yep.
I mean, I pretty much blacked out all of my 20s, so you I don't remember that at all. But that was so special to see that our first interaction was you believing in the brand.
Yeah.
That is, my mind is blown. 2014, that's a lot of years we've known each other.
It is a lot of years. But you know what? Like, I love the entire collection. I've always loved how every season you kind of like reiterate yourself. And you know, I love gold pieces. I love statement pieces. I love the big chunky necklaces and, you know, just kind of like the funky design aesthetic. So, yeah, I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is the highest of compliments, and I'm so honored. But years later, I saw you again on the internet, and you were wearing my pieces that you received from one of our wholesale partners. And we just kind of stayed in touch, and we kept running into each other at events and at, you know, all these different places. And here we are 6-7 years later.
Yeah.
It's so great to have you. Kinya is one of the most multifaceted women that I know, and you handle yourself with such grace and such poise. I want to know your secret sauce, because I'd like to take some notes on that. She is an influencer. She is a TV host. You're an entrepreneur. You're the editor-in-chief of Style and Society online magazine. Wow. That's not even the tip of the iceberg. You just do so many things, and you are so many things. It's more than just your resume. There is a kindness that you exude. Where does that kindness come from?
You know, I think that kindness comes from, you know, really like my humble upbringing in the beginnings, and you know, the fact that I actually never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to be an influencer or a content creator. It was just something that just happened organically. Like I was just following my passion, and then from that, you know, all of these things kind of developed from there. That's
amazing. What was the first avenue that kind of was brought into your life of the many fields that you're in now?
Yeah. Well, you know, I've always had a love of communication. Like I was always, as a child, like interested in the art of communication and you know, how to kind of like share information and technology. And so, you know, I went to college and I majored in mass communications. Mm-hmm. And I remember my very first class in college, the very first day of class, freshman year, my teacher said, and this is back in like 1998, he said, print news as we know it today in 10 years will be dead. Right. And this was in 1998, and 10 years later, it's, you know, 2008. And he was right. And so I didn't understand what that meant then, but I know then, like, we relied on the newspaper getting delivered every day to get our news, and actually turning on the radio and having to tune into the news station at 5 o'clock to receive news and information. Now, with as fast as technology has changed, you know, the way that we receive media and news is completely different. You know, now it's, you know, Twitter and the TMZs and influencers and, you know, social media outlets, you know, breaking the news. But, you know, I ended up majoring in mass communications from Sacramento State University, and then moved to Los Angeles. And actually, my first jobs were actually working in media. So I was fascinated with media, and, you know, I worked in radio, I worked in TV news, and I worked for print media, working for the Los Angeles Business Journal, and then learned from that I didn't really love working in media, actually. I'm so glad that I had the experience of radio, print, and TV, but, you know, the passion wasn't there. And so I transitioned that into working on the PR side. So I worked in PR and corporate communications and corporate social responsibility for like Fortune 50 companies and major brands like IKEA North America and American Honda Motor Company, where I worked in corporate affairs and communications, and even got the itch for entertainment, living in Los Angeles, and went to go work for PMK HBH, which at the time was the largest entertainment publicity firms in the world.
Casual.
Yep. Yep. I was a brands and events publicist. And, one of my first events that I managed was for Louis Vuitton, and it was like a new collection. It was a Murakami collab collection between Louis Vuitton and Kanye West, and that was like one of the first events that so I dove in head first into the whole like entertainment space and was able to like learn that. And I think what makes me really different is most people don't have the experience of media and all facets of media and the PR side, right? So when I'm working with brands and everything now, like I understand all sides because I've worked in all sides of the business. But my last job that I had was, I was actually at for about 10 years. I worked basically in public affairs for an architecture design engineering firm.
Yeah.
And I worked on a mass transit project. And, after the first couple of years in being there, I quickly realized my job wasn't my passion. But if your job isn't your passion, that's okay. But if your job isn't your passion, then you should create something that is to fulfill that passion. I mean, I was happy with my job. I did well at my job, but it wasn't sexy and it didn't fulfill my love of fashion and beauty and entertainment and travel and like food. And so while I was at my job, I just as a creative outlet, I created Style and Society. And
how long ago was that?
This was about 8 years ago.
Amazing.
Yeah, about 8 years ago, I created Style and Society. And, I already kind of had like the vision of like what I wanted to do. And it wasn't to create a business at all. And it wasn't even to make money. It was just for me to do something that I could share some of my things that I was passionate about to the world. And so I created my own platform. And, from my experience in working in media, it's like, I know that the media lacks diversity, right? So when you turn on the TV, when you open up a magazine, I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me. And so when creating Style and Society magazine, I wanted it to really represent diversity and inclusion. So no matter like who you are or like what you look like or what size you are, it's inclusive and you feel that inclusivity. So when you read the content, when you look at the pictures in the publication, it really represents the world that we live in. I am an African-American woman, and I do see things through that lens. And so that's exactly what Style and Society does. And so the history behind the name. So a lot of people ask me like, what was the hardest part about starting your business? And there was two. Like number one was actually starting it, right? Because I kind of had the vision in my head, but the hardest part about starting the business sometimes is actually just taking that step forward and actually starting it. And then the second part was finding my name, right? Because I had this idea of what I wanted to do, but as you know, the internet is so like cluttered. People just buy domains just to buy domains so that they can sell them. And it took me about a year to come up with my name, Style and Society. And style represents more than fashion. It represents lifestyle. And then the society part represents everything that we touch, see, and breathe. It's food, it's fashion, it's entertainment, it's travel. And it's really about the intersection of all of those things coming together to create Style and Society. And so it really just started out as a creative outlet, like a hobby. And I did it and worked full-time at my job. So I was essentially working like two full-time jobs. And so for a very long time, like my days, started like, like 4 a.m. because, we're here in the West Coast and, 3 hours behind New York. And so I would, wake up, work on Style and Society, check emails, write articles, do all that stuff, get up, get dressed, go to work, do my 9 to 5, and then bring a change of clothes to work. and, change in the car and then like go straight to some red carpet event or like award show or like whatever. And I did that for years and years and years and years.
How many years do you think?
I did it for about 6 years.
Amazing.
Yeah, about 6 years, because the thing that people also don't understand is, they just see like content creators, or they see influencers, or they just see social media, and they don't really understand like the journey that it takes to get there, right?
Absolutely.
You just don't become an influencer overnight and make $100,000 a year. Like, the first couple of years, I didn't make any money, but I was okay, because I said, even if I never made $1, I would still do it to the same capacity, that I'm doing it, today. And I don't know. I think that's part of the secret to success is the intent of why you're doing something. And yeah, for me, it's been great. So yeah, I did it. I did it for about 6 years, and then I got to a crossroads with my job, and I was like, my business was growing so fast. And
at that point you were making money.
At that
6
point,
years in.
Yeah. At that point I was making money. Not as much as I was making at my current job. At my current job, I was making a 6-figure salary.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also traveling all around the world. I was taking, influencer and press trips to like Greece and to Thailand. And
I saw those videos. They were so fun. They looked so fun. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till we can all travel again.
Yeah, to Armenia. Like, you name it. I literally had the opportunity to travel all over the world. And I remember being young as a child and always thinking like, I would travel 24/7 if I could. And I wish I had a job that would take me all around the world. I never thought it was attainable though. And all of a sudden, here I am, and I'm traveling all around the world with these tourism boards and these brands. And, my job my job knew about Style and Society, and it didn't really infringe upon my work, but I knew if I wanted to grow my brand, I needed to make a change. And it was really about stepping out of fear and like fully into faith to become a full-time entrepreneur. I was straddling both jobs for so long. And the thing is, I'm not a risk taker. Like, I'm a Libra, and like Libras are all about the balance scale, but we are definitely not risk takers. And it took a lot. It took a lot for me to step away for something that was secure and easy. Mm-hmm. Because, it's like when you're making a salary at a job, the reality is whether you do the work or not, you're still going to be making that money, right? When you're an entrepreneur, the only way you're making money is if you do the work.
You're only finish your last deal.
Yeah, and it's not, when you're an entrepreneur, it's not a 9 to 5.
Right.
Like a regular job, yeah, you do your 9 to 5, you go home and whatever. Like, entrepreneur is literally a 24/7 mm-hmm. job, mm-hmm. so you're never off. But if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And, so I it's funny because it's been about, I guess, like 2.5 years or so when I made the leap from becoming a full-time entrepreneur. But before I left my job, I asked my boss, I said, hey, can I go part-time? Can I telecommute? Can I work from home? Can I have a flexible work schedule? All these different options, because I was trying to still maintain both, but have a little bit more of a balance where, I was maybe, not contributing as much time to my job so I can focus more on my business. Right. They weren't receptive to anything.
I mean, that's a sign.
Right. And now everyone has to work from home.
Jokes on them.
Right. And they didn't get it. And I remember reading an article around that time that said, this was like maybe like 3 years ago, right? And I read an article that said like in the next 3 years, something like 50% of all millennials will quit their jobs, right? And I remember reading that, and I'm not a millennial. I'm what you call a zennial. I'm actually 40, although I look like I'm 30.
You look like you're 25.
I know. Most people think yeah.
It's unbelievable. If you guys could see your skin in person, I'm like, I need whatever you're using. You're beautiful.
Thank you. Black don't crack, so...
Facts.
I always say we all look like 10 years younger than what we really are.
Oh my gosh, at least.
Yeah. So yeah, so it's really been like amazing. It's been a blessing that I've been able to, kind of do what I love every single day with this business.
But does the Libra in you think that it's one part luck and then one part really, really, really hard work?
I don't think it's about luck. I don't think it's about luck. It's really about the hard work.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would say the same. I'm like, I'm so blessed, but I also work my ass off. So like, of course, something's gonna pop.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, again, like when people, so like before the pandemic, my life was very glamorous. It is very glamorous, I do have to admit. But when you look at my Instagram feed, you're going to see me, traveling in Mexico, and you're going to see me like, at all these fancy places, and you're going to see all these great clothes, and you're going to see, what looks like a great, fabulous lifestyle. And yeah, it is, but there is a lot of work that goes behind it. I mean, like my day-to-day at home right now is I spend most of my time sitting in my bed on my laptop in like my pajamas, like writing and working and responding to emails and like doing all of that. And then when it's time to like do a photo shoot and stuff, like, I'll put myself together and all of that. But I mean, there's a lot of work that goes behind it that a lot of people just don't know. That's not so glamorous.
What do you think the percentage of the behind the scenes Kinya on her laptop, no makeup and sweatpants looks like? What is that percentage of the day as opposed to the glamorous side?
Most of the day.
Like 80%.
Yeah. Like more than that.
At least, right?
Yeah. Like more than that.
People say the same thing of me. They're like, wow, you're so fancy. You're so glamorous. I'm like, if you only knew. Jokes on everyone.
Yeah.
What does your decision-making process look like? Because we went through a few points in your life where you've had to make big decisions. And I imagine now when you have so many inbound inquiries, you have to say yes and no to them. Mm-hmm. What does that process look like for you?
Well, you know what, to be honest with you, I rarely say no. I do. I rarely say no because I can say yes. Like, like I'm single, like I don't have any kids, like, and while I can work and while I have the capacity to do so, like I want to be able to do as much as I can right now. And so I oftentimes do. I actually love like working and I love what I do. And so, and I love being busy. It's like when I'm not busy, then I start getting like antsy because I'm like, I should be busy.
You're like, what can I fill my time with?
Yeah.
I really appreciate that because you are the woman who is everywhere all the time. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you saying that you really love saying yes to things because I'm that way as well.
Yeah.
That really resonates.
Yeah. And I think also like what makes me different compared to a lot of other influencers and content creators and everything is most content creators and influencers, they really just work in one silo, right? So their beat is fashion mm-hmm. or it's lifestyle or it's health and wellness or it's food or it's travel or it's entertainment or it's beauty. I'm really unique because I do it all. So I work with the biggest brands across all those different verticals. And, I'm a dynamic woman and
beyond, like magnetic beyond. Continue.
I'm a dynamic woman and I like a lot of different things and I don't feel like I should be put in a box. So a lot of people say, oh, you should stay in your niche, on Instagram, like find what your niche is. And I'm like, I don't have a niche. Like I like it all,
Kinya Claiborne, the woman who does everything all the time, forever, always, in perpetuity.
Yeah. Because you know what? Like if I just did one thing, I would get bored easily, So I love like I just did a Valentine's Day campaign with Dove. I'm a Dove ambassador. So I'm working with
Congratulations.
Dove. Thank you. Like on the entertainment side, like I've done campaigns with like WeTV and like Lifetime TV. On the fashion side, like I'm an ambassador for Revolve. I've been working with Revolve for almost 4 years. Amazing. I've traveled all around the world with Revolve. About a year ago, I was in Australia with them. Literally across all those different verticals, I sometimes I pinch myself. I'm like, oh my God, like I just did a campaign for Secret deodorant and like Serena Williams is one of their ambassadors, and I just did a campaign with them. Like, how cool is that?
I knew you would. This is so cool. You do so many things. If you were to pick just one, what would it be? If you had to. I know this is like worst case scenario here.
Yeah. I think if I had to pick, it would probably be fashion, just because, I mean, I've always had a love for fashion, and there's like a backstory behind like my love for fashion. So, and it starts with my parents. So my mom, she always wanted to be like a fashion designer, right? And so like in her yearbook, it says like fashion designer. Like that's what she wanted to do, like in her high school yearbook. And her first job out of college, she grew up in the South. She grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. Her first job out of college she was a junior buyer for Macy's in San Francisco.
Wow.
Which was a big time thing. I mean, at the time, like Macy's San Francisco was like, when it was the biggest.
That was Macy's in its prime.
Exactly, at its prime. And this was back in like the late 70s.
Mm-hmm. And from the Bay Area, that was a huge deal.
Exactly, yeah. So that was her first job out of college. And so she was a junior buyer for Macy's. And then my dad, so I didn't know this story until I became an adult. But my dad, he grew up in the South Side of Chicago. He was born in 1944 in the projects. And it's called Argyle Gardens, like the toughest, hardest, like hood, like projects, like you can imagine. And that's where he grew up. And he was fascinated with Archie comic books. But he was really infatuated with Victoria, which was the female character in the Archie comic books. He was infatuated with her dresses that she would wear. And this infatuation grew and grew and grew. And he started like sketching women's like couture gowns. And he would go in his attic, and he had thousands and thousands and thousands of sketches that he drew of like this women's dress designs, because he was inspired by that character in that comic book.
While he was with your mother or before?
No. This was when he was a kid, like 6 years old to like 14 years old. Like for years, he would go in the attic and just sketch, and he could draw really well. And, he developed this love for fashion, but particularly women's fashion as a child. One day his grandfather went in the attic and found all of these sketches of women's dresses that he had drawn. He took them all and threw them in the furnace. And I said, I better not ever catch you like drawing another woman's dress or sketching another woman's dress again. He was like, that's gay. You're a boy. You're not supposed to do that. And he kind of knew, like he grew up in the projects, and it's like, in a really tough area, like he knew, like if his friends saw, like it wouldn't be
he'd receive choice words.
Yeah, which is why he hid it. But when his grandfather found it, it's like he burned them all in the furnace, and he said, I better not ever catch you doing this again. And from that day on, his grandfather tried to instill in him what it meant to be like a man, like manual labor, hard work. And as soon as he became of age, he sent him off to the military, and he went on to Vietnam and everything. But I mean, it did kill his love for fashion, but he still does, even today, have that passion. And I remember when Project Runway first came on, like the first season.
The best show ever.
Ever, right?
Oh my gosh. I met Santino.
Oh, yeah?
He's in downtown Los Angeles.
Oh my gosh.
He's a restaurateur now. It was like all my worlds collided. Continue.
Yeah. And he Michael Costello. Like I remember watching that season, and he didn't win, but I remember looking at his designs, and he wasn't even trained to be a pattern designer or a fashion designer. He just kind of, learned it self-taught. And I remember looking at his perspective when it came to design and the woman's body and the textures of the fabrics and the print. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is dope. And like, look at him now. He designs for the biggest stars in the world.
He's brilliant. I met him at an event in Palm Springs. I went up to him. I said, we have the same initials. We also have the same last name. He's like, oh my gosh, what's up, sis? It's so sweet. So sweet.
Yeah. And I remember this is when the first season came out, which was how many years ago?
Oh my gosh, I think it was in high school.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But me and my dad, we would watch it together and discuss all the fashion. And I didn't know the story about his love of fashion back then. But, we would just, every week watch the episodes and discuss all the fashion and stuff like that. And then years later, he told me about how his love of fashion began, which is a really interesting story.
So being a creative is in your DNA.
Mm-hmm.
It's nature and nurture, but a lot of nature.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yep.
That is so cool. Did your mom ever do anything?
Yeah. So my mom, she teaches fashion and food, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's just a family creative empire.
And you know what's so interesting is I actually did my first campaign with my mom. It was for a brand called Urban Plates. And we did kind of like a cooking, kind of like taste test, kind of a video thing. And it was great, like being able to work with my mom on that. And me and my dad, we also did like a campaign for Purdue Farms, and it was like a food related thing. But my mom, because she teaches food and fashion, she teaches high school and kind of like home economics, but her focus is food and fashion. Now with the pandemic, she's had to kind of convert kind of like the in-classroom teaching to now virtual teaching. So now she's like an expert when it comes to like creating like video content and like, cooking and like, sewing stuff and like fashion stuff, like these videos and everything. And
there's so much overlap between your worlds.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm sure you stay inspired by them.
Yeah.
Constantly. And vice versa. I'm sure they draw inspiration from you too.
Yeah.
That is so cool. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have, my younger brother passed away. He passed away of suicide, actually, some years ago. And I have an older brother as well. And actually last year in 2020, during the midst of the pandemic, I found out that I have a sister.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Pretty crazy. Yeah. So I did the 23andMe DNA test. And I had the test, I had the kits. I've had the kits for a couple of years, but I've just been so busy. I just never had the chance to like sit down and actually do it and like send it in. So I had a test and I had an extra one. So I gave it to my dad and I was like, hey, okay, now it's the pandemic, like let's just go ahead and just do it. So we did it. And then when the results came back, it said, I have a half sister. And on his results, it said he has a daughter. And we both were like, what?
Oh my gosh. What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
Mine came back and was boring as ever. I was like, I know exactly the same information as before. There were no surprises. You're an OG influencer. Walk us through what being an influencer looked like when you first began versus what it looks like now, pre-pandemic, how that journey has transformed for you.
Well, I think when I first started creating content, it was, the term influencer didn't really exist. Like you had your Kim Kardashians and your celebrities and stuff like that. And really they were the influencers. And I think for me, it was just kind of organically creating content and brands really taking notice of that content and then brands offering me money to create content. And it's grown to today where actually now I'm signed to a management agency that's based in New York. And
how long ago did you sign with them?
I signed with them about a year ago.
Amazing.
Yeah, I signed with them about a year ago, and it's been great. But I think what's happened is with the rise of the pandemic, everyone thinks they're an influencer. Everyone calls themselves an influencer. Like, even if you just have an Instagram account that you've posted on 5 times, you call yourself an influencer. And so now I feel that term is like very like loosely, you know what I mean? It's just so convoluted. And so like like when people ask me like, what do you do? Like, it's hard to quantify it because I don't know if it's like, yeah, I'm not really a blogger. I'm an influencer. I guess I'm a content creator. I'm also an editor-in-chief. I'm also an entrepreneur. Like, I'm also just a badass boss babe. Like, there's so many like hats that I wear, but I definitely do think, it's the term influencer today has gotten very cloudy. And, but I do think like, listen, like if you're an entrepreneur or an aspiring influencer, whatever, like definitely right now, like utilize social media as a free marketing tool to help promote like whatever it is that you're trying to promote.
Totally. Your world has become very fruitful during the pandemic. Explain yourself. I mean, you and I touched base right before the pandemic. I think I was sending you jewelry for a particular trip. And since then, you have just been nonstop. I'm shocked you're in town. I'm shocked you're available. Like, thank you for being here. But also, like, why are you here? Because you're one of the busiest, like, intentionally busy people that I know. So tell us about what the pandemic has brought to your life.
Yeah. So like pre-pandemic, I was going to anywhere between 1 and 6 events every single day.
Wow. So, every single day, 7 days a week.
Yeah. And granted, like, I do have an amazing team. So Style and Society is bigger than me. It's really about the team, and the team is really the backbone behind it. So yeah, it may not have been me necessarily going to all 6. Like, maybe I might go to 1 or 2, and I might have like some of my team members, like, go to some of the other ones. But basically we did have, we were at everything, like every award show, restaurant openings, fashion events, movie premieres, product launches, you name it. Like, red carpets pretty much every single day, like a super cool, fun life. And when the pandemic hit, of course, all the events were canceled. And so now it's been almost a year since there's been any events. And what we had to do as a company is really kind of retool our focus, because we covered a lot of events. And from covering events every day to all the events being canceled, we had to shift. And so now what we do is we do a lot of like virtual events, a lot of virtual premieres and stuff like that. There's like a lot of drive-through events. Like, I just went to Disney last week, hosted a series of events, like drive-through events for some launches with Disney Plus. And they just released like Brandy's Cinderella on Disney Plus, and so they did like a big drive-through event.
The best movie ever.
Yep.
Brandy and Whitney. Hello.
Yeah.
The best.
So they did a big event. So like a lot of the stuff that we do now is like virtual events and like, like drive-through events and stuff like that. I shifted and also brands were looking for, because they couldn't do events. So they were really relying on content creators and influencers to create content to kind of keep their brand like top of mind for consumers. And then, Black Lives Matter happened. And, and it really, I think, opened the eyes for some businesses.
Most businesses.
Right.
I would say majority were like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We should have been paying attention.
Exactly. And so if they weren't being diverse and inclusive in terms of the content, they were forced to do so, and they were being held accountable if they weren't. And so
enter Kinya, stage left.
Yeah. And so yeah, I think it was, the movement was good in terms of amplifying Black voices and these businesses being held accountable, for their actions. And it was very clear. It's like, if you just go on their Instagram feed, you could see whether or not they were truly representing diversity and inclusion or not. It was quite apparent. And, everyone wanted to jump on the bandwagon saying how they wanted to reconfirm their commitment to Black Lives Matter and all this stuff. But it's like, there were so many businesses that didn't put any action behind it. It's like, yeah, they did the Blackout Tuesday, and yeah, they issued a statement. But like, looking back, it's like, okay, like, so, how many influencers of color are you working with? How are you amplifying Black voices? What does your staff internally look like? Like, how does your executive team, are they diverse? Because it really comes from the top bottom. So it starts there. So if your team isn't diverse internally, that really shows you like how much you really do support inclusion and diversity. And so, yeah, so I don't know. It's been, the pandemic for me has been great because I've been able to, to really grow, and I really needed the slowdown because I was going to all these events, and it was just like, right now is the midst of award season. So like one of the busiest times of year for me, and like all kind, like, the Grammys and the Golden Globes and, just back to back to back award shows.
Well, you're also covering it from different perspectives. You're going in as a guest and also as media to cover it. So you're attacking all of these events from every angle.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, maybe I wouldn't have had, the focus that I have today in terms of, kind of the other side of the business, that I do and, really the influencer side and being able to have time to work with brands and create content for brands. And to be honest, right now is a really interesting time because, when the pandemic hit, all the travel was canceled. Immediately. I actually had a trip with Revolve to the Bahamas planned in March of last year. And that trip was canceled because of the pandemic. Now we see this resurgence from tourism boards and from hotels. And, the travel industry is we're open for business. We want people to feel comfortable and safe and travel, but ensure that they're doing it safely. So I just actually did a really big campaign with the Cabo Tourism Board.
Amazing. Tell me everything.
Yeah. And it's funny, so I went to Cabo twice over the past 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh. Why didn't want to just stay there? You had things to do.
I know.
Oh my gosh. My jet setting friend.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah, but it's been great. So yeah, travel is booming right now. And I have trips planned almost every single week.
Where are you going next?
So I have, let's see, where am I going next? The Yosemite.
Amazing.
And Arizona, Grand Canyon. I've been to Park City, Utah 3 times over the past 4 months. They love me there. Every time I go, I get invited back before I even leave. So I'll be going back there really soon. And I'm going to Big Bear in a couple of days. Just kind of we can't, travel looks different today, right? So for us being here in the US, there's not as much international travel, but there still is a focus of hey, we're trading in our passports for road trips, and what things can we do to kind of continue to fulfill that wanderlust.
I love that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. What does your self-care look like? How do you love on yourself? Because I feel like the outsider's perspective, when I see you, everything is beautifully polished and you look well rested always and your skin is glowing and you're always so well put together. And we know we have those moments of, having difficult days, but how do you consistently care for yourself to maintain that glow?
Yeah. So self-care is definitely a buzzword right now. We hear it all the time, every single day. But self-care is really important. And so, there's been more of a focus in shifting from makeup to now skincare, right. Is a focus and really taking the time to really care for yourself. And part of that is your mental health. And, a lot of us right now are living in isolation and it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough not to have that human interaction and not to be social. And in some cases, people not being able to see their parents or seeing their friends or seeing their siblings, right. Or their coworkers. And the downside of that is sometimes you don't know what someone's going through internally. And sometimes if you look at someone's Instagram, just because it looks like they're fine doesn't mean they are fine. And so I do think part of self-care is the mental health component. And it's still important that although you may not be able to see, in person, your loved ones, it's so important to continue to check in on them, mm-hmm. to make sure that they're okay and if they need anything. And, sometimes all you have to ask is, are you okay? When my brother passed away, nobody knew that he was sick. No one knew that he had a mental illness. Right. And maybe if we had have asked, maybe we would have known. But, I think a lot of people right now are struggling. This pandemic is tough. It's tough.
Brutal.
It is brutal. And there's not really a light at the end of the tunnel. Yet.
I'm still hopeful. Still hopeful.
Yeah.
You're so right. But you're absolutely right. For me, self-care, top of the list is therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I go every week from 1 hour to 4 hours. It depends on what I'm dealing with. And sometimes I go in and I'm thinking, I feel like this is a great week. I don't really have much to talk about. And that's when the actual work happens. That's when we really uncover the good stuff. And it's important. It's so important to do that for yourself. It's a lesson that I didn't learn until later in life. I think that, I pushed myself a lot and was really in the Western civilization of just go, 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 work, work, work. That's why you're here. When really love and connection is why we're here.
Yeah.
A la radio show, a la having you here in my space, that's the important stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. What does your daily routine look like? Are you a regimented person, or does every day look a little bit different?
My outlook on life is tomorrow is not promised and every day is a new adventure. So I live every day to its fullest, but, to work from home, it's like you do definitely have to be self-motivated. And for me, it does help to kind of like have a little bit of like a routine, because it could get very mundane, especially being in isolation. And, so yeah, I mean, the majority of my day, again, really consists of emails and being on social media and writing and all of that stuff. And I mean, but the great thing about being able to work from home and being an entrepreneur is you can do it anywhere in the world, from anywhere in the world. Right. So yeah, I could be in Cabo and I can continue to run my business or I could be, I could literally be anywhere. And so I think that's the great thing. And I think people should really look at the pandemic as not as something that's been a negative. It's like, how could you use this time as a positive? Because never, ever probably in our lifetime will we ever have a moment like this where things are kind of paused, where you're able to, really reassess the things that are important to you in your life and really focus on those. So, hey, if you've always wanted to start a business, now it's the time to do it. If you've ever had a passion to do something, now it's the time to start it, Absolutely. I like to say no time is a good time to start, just be an entrepreneur. On the flip side, every time is the right time to be an entrepreneur. So just go. It doesn't matter if you're in a pandemic or not. I think we are also afforded, with all of its challenges. And obviously, this is completely an aside from people who are actually suffering with their health and dealing with the virus on an extreme level. But this is a time where we have space and time to create things and to start on new projects. Yeah. So, and even taking that step further, again, like I'm 40 years old, single, no kids. I always imagine like, hey, by the time I'm like, mid 20s, I'll be married with kids. Mid 20s happen. Nope. 30s happen. Nope. Now I'm 40 and I'm like, is this going to ever happen? But, we live in Los Angeles. Los Angeles sucks for dating.
What are you talking about? I have no idea. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it sucks for dating.
I'll send you my book.
And, but, also, it's, the pandemic has really made me, have that space and time to really think about, okay, some of the priorities in my life and like, what do I want? And, a little bit more focus on, kind of like, the next chapter, and
what do you want?
Well, I would like to get married and like have kids, but before I was so focused on my career and like doing my thing and like independent and like going to, flying all over the world and then like red carpet and stuff like that. And to be honest, like, and it's not, and I think a lot of guys here are just so intimidated by like a strong woman.
I think there's a lot of different factors.
Yeah.
But
I think that's one of them. And insecure, very insecure.
But also the women that I know here are next level spectacular. There is such a strong community of like badass, heavy hitter females who just do no harm and take no shit and slay.
Yeah.
Consistently, which is the most impressive thing.
Yeah. And you should never compromise yourself or apologize for being just as fabulous as you are.
Absolutely not. I feel like the older that I get, the younger that I feel. And the more that happens within my brand and the more that I grow, the more growing I feel like I need to do. So I think surrounding yourselves with expanders and with a good support system is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
What does your support system look like?
So I think my family and my friends, I think, and then also my team, Style and Society, I think, the combination of all of those together is, we all support, one another.
It's amazing. Can you walk through what your team looks like?
Yeah. So I have a team of maybe 20, and everyone lives remotely. Like I have some team members that are in Philippines, some in Ghana, some in New York, some in New Orleans. Literally all over,
It's a global brand.
Yeah. And, some of them it's always been remote. So like when Style and Society was birthed, it was birthed as an online publication. It's never been, or it will never be like a print publication. And the whole idea of virtual working and all of that is, it's part of our DNA. And my team is a combination of, photographers and, other creators and writers and, webmasters and, social media gurus. And, really Style and Society is not just an online publication, but it's really a brand. And, with the team, it's almost like a mentorship, you know what I mean? And it's like, we all really support like one another, and it's been great.
It's a true community.
It's a community. Yeah.
How long did it take you to get from yourself to 20?
You know what? I've never advertised any kind of job or opportunity ever, because I didn't want it to be that. I just wanted it to be just for me. Because really, I created it selfishly, like just for myself.
As a passion project.
It wasn't intended to be a business. But then people started reaching out to me like, hey, I love the brand. I would love to be a part of it. How can I be a part of it? And I've been able to use Style and Society as a way to empower others to be able to do what they want to do. So if they're really into photography or they're really into travel photography, I'm like, okay, like let's do a travel trip together, and that way you can fulfill kind of like, that love for, travel photography, and you can get the experience, and we could, and so it kind of organically just developed, and people just wanted to become part of this community. And that's kind of how it really started.
That's so cool. Do you have a business coach, or are you just naturally savvy, or did you just learn on the go?
It was literally, I didn't have like a mentor or anyone or like a roadmap of how to start a business. I literally just did it, because it wasn't intended to be a business. It was just a passion project. So, I started it, and then I just kind of learned as I went. But to be honest, it's so easy today to start a business. It's so different than what it used to be like 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. Like now you can literally start a business in one day, getting on your computer, having internet access, like, go to GoDaddy, get a domain, like get your DBA. Like, it's just like, there's just a few simple things to do. And then it's like, yeah. And then you just start. But the first step is actually starting. But the tools are there, and it's easy and it's inexpensive to do so.
Free. There's so much free information.
Exactly. You can create a website, like with the template, like
your mentor is Google.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Free marketing through social media. Absolutely. Use that, to market your brand.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your relationship with Los Angeles. Do you like it here?
I do love Los Angeles.
You love it. How long have you been here?
I moved here after college in 2002. And when I moved to Los Angeles, I moved to downtown Los Angeles, because I kind of grew up in like this very suburban, very vanilla type of community. So I grew up in a small town called Fairfield, which is right outside of Napa Valley. I love wine and I love Napa, but I moved away from home when I was 17 to go to college. And so I didn't appreciate where I grew up. I just thought it was so boring, and I just couldn't wait to get out and live in the big city. And so when I moved to Los Angeles, I moved to downtown because I liked that grimy, gritty type of structure and environment. Like I love that it was diverse. And I love that it was urban, and I wanted to be part of the community and part of like the development of it. And so I remember moving to downtown. People thought I was crazy. They're like, what? It's like, that's like the capital of like Skid Row,
right?
Highest homeless percent per capita in the country.
Right.
I live one zip code away from Skid Row.
Right.
But, living near Skid Row never bothered me because like, for the past, like, I don't know, like 10 years, every Christmas, me and my family would actually go to the LA Mission and volunteer and help like feed the homeless people. It's like homeless people are no different than me and you, but hey, I mean, the cost of living in LA is so expensive. I might be homeless. I mean,
Lord knows. Lord only knows.
Right. But I really do feel like, like I'm like Sex in the City, like living in downtown, like with my block, like Style and Society and like everything I'm doing and like traveling. Like, I definitely feel like this is like if Sex in the City moved to the West Coast, which they should, and it should be more diverse.
Agreed.
I would be the star.
I second that wholeheartedly. What's next for your brand?
Well, when I started Style and Society, I started it with the vision that, today it's an online publication. Tomorrow it could be a reality TV show. It could be a talk show. It could be a fashion line. It could be anything, So right. Style and Society is really kind of like the overarching brand. And underneath that, it can go so many different directions. And actually, after the first year of launching Style and Society, I partnered with Onyx Media and actually launched a video extension of the magazine called The Stylist. So it was a TV show that's an extension of the magazine that we did like 43 episodes of it. Wow. I was co-executive producer of it.
I saw them. They're spectacular.
Thank you. And it kind of touched on like, fashion trends and pop culture. A lot of people told me that it reminded them of kind of a rebooted version of like MTV House of Style and MTV News, kind of like an updated version of that. But yes, we did like 43 episodes of it. It's very time consuming to do. But yeah, I mean, one day would love to get back to that. Maybe doing some other executive producing for some other shows. I would love to get into TV and like commercials and stuff like that. So we'll see.
That's amazing. Did you have any coaching or did you take any performative classes to learn how to speak in front of the camera? Because you are so naturally animated and you're so well spoken.
Funny thing is I actually hate speaking in front of crowds.
Stop.
I hate and that's why that's why I got into PR and I left media because I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I didn't want to be the center of attention. I didn't want to be on stage. Like I have like really bad stage fright and like, I'm a very social person. Like I get along with everyone. Like I can go right in and kind of like be the life of the party, but I don't need to be the center of attention. Like I don't need to be in the forefront. I'm content being behind the scenes. This lifestyle and my career has forced me to be in front of the camera. But, it's funny because people thought like during the pandemic, they were like, oh my God, like, what are you going to do? Like, cause you're always out in events, you're always traveling, you're always doing this. And now you're on lockdown. Like, are you going to be okay? And what people don't realize is as a child, like all I did was stay home. And I love just being in my room and creating my own little fantasy world with my dolls and playing Tea Party and dressing up and just creating my own little world at home. And in fact, like my whole, like as a child, and even as a teenager, I never had a curfew. Like I never was told I needed to go to bed at a certain time. I never, in high school, never had a curfew because I never went out. Like I never went out. And so like, yeah, like I would tuck myself into bed as a kid at 8 p.m., never wanted to stay up and watch TV. I was like, tuck myself in like, as a teenager, like never really went out to parties or football games and stuff like that. And so actually as a punishment, like when I would get in trouble, like my dad would basically kick me out of the house and say, you need to go outside and play or just get out.
Wow,
so I would sit on the front porch and just cry because I didn't want to go anywhere.
Oh my gosh. So you're an extroverted introvert.
Kind of. And so yeah, of course I love traveling and all the glitz and glam and the events and stuff like that. But you know what? I could be just as happy and content as spending an entire weekend at home with a bottle of wine and Lifetime movies.
Oh my gosh, sign me up. That sounds like heaven.
Yeah.
Both worlds, though.
Yeah.
And I think that's
it's the balance.
Maybe
right?
That's why I was taken to you when we first met a million years ago when the dinosaurs were still around, because I felt that. I felt that comfortability. You are so yourself, and it is so refreshing to meet someone, especially in this town, who is that, who leads with that the moment that you meet them. I mean, it's just been such a privilege to know and support and watch you succeed and be on the sidelines and be your cheerleader. You are such an impressive human, and I'm so grateful to know you.
Oh, thank you.
You are so welcome. Where can our listeners find you on the internet?
Well, you can definitely hit me up on Instagram, Kinya Claiborne, and that's KinyAClaiborne. You can also follow us on Instagram at Style and Society. We are also on TikTok. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Clubhouse. So feel free to slide into my DM. I always check them. My email address is right there in my Instagram profile. Definitely check out styleandsociety.com. You can catch up on, all of my travel adventures, all the entertainment, fashion, beauty, lifestyle, food stuff. I would love to hear from you guys.
A huge thank you to Kinya for being such an incredible guest and touching upon the importance of managing mental health. If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health, we encourage you to contact the Substance Abuse and Mental Health National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. Thank you so much for tuning into Marrin Costello Radio, hosted by Dash Radio and sponsored by Island City Media Group. If you'd like to connect with us offline, you can find us on Instagram at Marrin Costello and Marrin Costello Radio. See you next week.